the revolutionary ankle lock system, an integrated brace built into the boots, delivering unrivaled support, protecting ligaments from twists, tears, and trauma.
Matt Lenihan for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store. Our Kings were here, Dan Rafael. Dan, happy holidays, I suppose, over there in the States. It's a bank holiday, as we would call it over here. But how's things anyway?
Things are good. We finally, as they say, we had the action picking up this past weekend a little bit for the first time in a few weeks. Been real slow.
Yeah, it's been. I feel like we've had it's such a good time for the sport, but it has felt like a lull ever since I've come back to the UK. Anyway, there's been bits and pieces, but nothing really that's like hit off yet. But look, the weekend hit off. Obviously, we had Dave Allen over here put up a spirited performance against Matt Madoff. I wanted to speak to you about the Boots win against Lima first, because as you know, obviously in the build up to that, I think Eddie Hearn, maybe not an arsehole, responded to the comments you made at the start of it. So look, all through my feed when I was trying to catch up on the action, obviously it didn't take me long to watch the highlights because you just switched around.
Watch the whole fight was like 2 minutes.
Exactly. All that was coming through my feed was a tweet from Luda Bella that came through straight away to the top saying, "Don't want to hear any hype or BS or about this. The guy who Boots fought was awful. This meant nothing." Yourself, obviously, I know you don't sort of double down on that kind of thing with the comments saying, obviously, drilling Lima doesn't show it, etc. What do you make of it? Is it if they couldn't get another fight in between, is it important to keep Boots active? I know, like, who would have been? I suppose we touched on it before, but was there a more suitable, available alternative that would have been like...
They could have gone down the list and found somebody. There was money available for the fight. Let's just call it what it was. It was a garbage fight. That's what it was. But I'll say this on the, because I can sit here and I can rip the shit out of it for an hour if you want me to. But I'll also give credit where it's due. When you get matched with that type of opponent in a main event on a subscription network, and you're expected to do what he did, which is to make it an easy night. At least he went out there and did it. So a lot of guys get matched in shit fights, and maybe they struggle a little bit, or it goes 5, 6, 8, 10. Maybe it goes the distance, and the fighter gets the win, but you kind of are left a little bit disappointed in the performance. At least matched with a nobody, matched with a guy that couldn't carry his jockstrap, matched with a guy that was a ridiculous opponent to be in there in the first place, matched with a guy who the only thing that Eddie Hearn could come up with to somehow pimp it to the public like it meant something was to say that the man was the IBO champion. And last time I checked, most people don't consider that to be anything too credible. So at least Ennis went in the ring and did what he was supposed to do and didn't drag it out for 10 rounds or 9 rounds, and he blew him away, absolutely destroyed him in 2 minutes. And that was at least entertaining to watch, but just, a waste of time as a fight.
I was going to say, I suppose the flip side to maybe that point of it is you just hit the nail on the head there. When you get superstars, and we've seen it before, when you look at the likes of a Tyson Fury, he used to get called for it all the time. When he fights a guy that he's maybe can't get up for, he becomes a bit sloppy, and you're not expecting, what's expected sometimes doesn't happen. Boots went out there and just said, "No, I'll show you the levels quite quickly," and it was over and done with. 2 knockdowns, thank you, see you later kind of thing. So I suppose that is, like you said, that is a positive, that if you are this superstar, you are that guy who everyone's talking about, before we start actually seeing these names on the list, you should really be doing that.
So look, he's 35-0. Can't argue with that. He's 28 years old. He's entering his prime, should be entering his prime thereabouts, or in it as we speak. And still, and again, I'm not faulting him entirely. A lot of it had to do with the way he was moved for several years, even before he was with Matchroom Boxing. But at that level of the number of fights he's had, the age he has, the experience he has had, his resume is extraordinarily thin. But we all see the talent. This is never, like, people get on my case because I bitch about the fight on social media. They're like, I'm the biggest Boots hater in the world. Nothing could be further from the truth. The reason I'm so hard on it is because I think he's such a big talent that he deserves to have the bigger, better fights so he can show himself and the world just how good he is. And when you get matched with Lima and several other opponents he's faced in the recent past, it's kind of pathetic, because we know that he can be in these bigger fights and do better things. And hopefully now that will be the case. But this is not about me not liking Boots Ennis or him not being a good guy or anything like that. We can just see, we call it the eye test. He passes the eye test, but now you want to see him in with those opponents. And I understand it was his first fight at 154, but so what? There's plenty of guys that come into a new division and go right straight away to a big time fight. I'll use an extreme example. Sugar Ray Leonard comes off a massive layoff of like almost 4 years or something like that, 3+ years, and comes back and fights Marvin Hagler at middleweight, moving up 2 weight classes. So, don't give me, he's got to test the waters. Okay, test the waters against a real guy, not a guy, that was the level of a Lima that lost to Aaron McKenna. Give me a break.
Let me just look at the list. So Adi Oladipo, who does a lot for DAZN, he uploaded like the list of the 154 division. You look and go top to bottom. There's a lot of good fights to be made in there. I mean, I've got to say as well, a shout out to Abbas Barao, who became WBA world champion. He's someone I've spoken to for a lot of years. He worked hard. He was in a great fight and got over the line in there. And then he got elevated champion, obviously, because Terence vacated, moving up the divisions. But when you look top to bottom and you look at a guy like Boots and you look at a Fundora and you start going on this, there's so many fun fights to make in that division. Win, lose, draw for whoever.
Well, 154 for my money is probably the most talent-rich weight class, at least at the very top. They may not have a singular superstar name. Sometimes, you go to a certain division, there's that one guy that everybody gravitates to. They all come into the weight class and they want to fight that guy that makes the money, like it was for a long time in whatever weight class Canelo was in, for example. At super middleweight, a lot of guys started to gravitate there because he was the big name. But 154 right now, again, it doesn't have that one singular name, but it has a lot of guys. Like you say, you can mix and match any of them, whether it's, now Ennis is there, Virgil Ortiz is there. You got the other you got the champions like Fundora, Murtaza Aleyev, Xander Zayas. You got Lubin who's fighting Ortiz coming up. You got a tremendous amount of talent. You mentioned Abbas. Even Tellez, who he beat, it's still a guy that could compete potentially with some of those better names. Madrimov. Well. I mean, I know Boachuk just lost, but he lost, in losing to Brandon Adams, he can compete with some of those guys. So, there's a lot of good talent in that weight class, no doubt about it.
The talk is that, and I spoke to Eddie about a week ago about this, and I said, is this fight as good as done, the Ortiz fight? Because people, I think, won't accept this fight, but at some point they need to, like you're saying, it's not the question of the guy's talent, it's let's start seeing the substance against the guys that can offer more than respect for the Lima. And he was like, there's nothing signed, we had the agreement and blah, blah, but now it seems like it's picking up again. How excited would you be for a Boots and Virgil Ortiz fight? I mean, I look at that on paper and go, yeah, sign me up. That's more like it.
That's a terrific fight. I mean, that's the whole point of this sport. I mean, to see the best against the best. And no doubt, I mean, it may not be for a major world title because they have interim titles where Virgil will, he's got the WBC interim title. I think people have to also just calm down a little bit and just remember when Virgil Ortiz fights in a few weeks, he's not going in with a Lima level opponent. He's going with Erickson Lubin, who is a seasoned veteran, who's a very good fighter in his own right, has absolutely a chance to win that fight. Sure, he's going to be the underdog, but I don't think it's going to be substantial. I think we would look at that like maybe like a 60-40 kind of fight. But Erickson Lubin's going to have something to say about the future of a Boots Ennis Virgil Ortiz fight. What I liked about Boots in his interview that he did after the Lima fight was talking about how he wants Virgil Ortiz next. But he says, hey, he's got to win his fight. And if he doesn't, then I'll fight Lubin. And then he said, I'll fight. And he went through all the other names in the division that we were just talking about, the other guys with belts and this and that. So, I can't say that fight's as good as done. The way I understand it is when Eddie did they did a contract extension between Matchroom and Ennis. And as part of that contract extension was an agreement and the terms between Eddie and Boots for what it would take to get him into the fight with Virgil Ortiz. But as I've said to others as well, sometimes in boxing, people forget or fans don't realize it's not as simple as, okay, we have a deal for a fight. The promoter has to make a deal with his fighter. So Eddie apparently has something in writing or something that's done between him and Boots. But that's only one part of the entire equation. You still have to have Golden Boy, which is the promoter for Virgil Ortiz. They have to get a deal done with their fighter. Mm-hmm. Then you got to have a deal done between Matchroom Boxing and Golden Boy, the two promoters with each other. And then you also have to take into account whatever the contractual scenarios are between the broadcaster and the promoters. So they got to sit with DAZN and come to terms. Even though that fight will be, I'm sure, contemplated as a pay-per-view, you still have to get that hammered out and do all the details on that. So I don't think there's going to be an issue with DAZN. I mean, they really want the fight, obviously. And basically, from what Eddie was saying and what Oscar De La Hoya has been saying, it doesn't seem like there's going to be too much issue between Matchroom and Golden Boy. And I'm not saying there's going to be an issue between Golden Boy and Virgil, but they still have to do it. And I understand why they're not in a hurry right now, because look, their guy Virgil's got a very significant fight coming up in a few weeks. So you're not going to rock the boat there. Let him go do his business, get through that fight. If he wins and he doesn't get injured, hopefully everything goes well for him from that respect. And then when that fight's over, you give him a few days, and then you sit down with his manager, Rick Meridian, and you try to hammer out the deal.
Yeah, definitely.
But it feels like first quarter of 2026. That's the fight we're going to see, in the first few months of the year. And obviously, it's a big time fight. And even if it's not for a world title fight, you'll be able to make the argument that the winner of the fight is potentially number one in the division. I mean, I guess Fundora would have something to say about that. But regardless, it's a tremendous matchup.
Definitely. And like you say, a stacked division pound for pound, whether you want to talk about belts or anything like that, when you look at the top 10, just mix and match and let them all fight, and everyone gets the money's worth as long as they can come to terms.
And even when I was going through the list, I didn't even mention Keith Thurman, who has had the one win in the division. Unfortunately, his fight with Fundora is postponed because of Fundora's injury, but that's going to get rescheduled from what they tell me in January. So that fight will still happen, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Look, news that also came out as well. I was in Vegas for Manny Pacquiao's return last time out against Barrios. He's announced that he'll be coming back January 24th. Rumours are it's Rolly Romero. Your thoughts?
Well, that matchup is something that I think if he's going to fight again was sort of what was expected. I'm told that although Manny made that little social media video that said January 24th, there was nothing done yet. It still may be the time when that happens, but I wouldn't necessarily go be buying a ticket or a plane ticket or whatever to get to Vegas for that day for that fight. Because remember that also potentially could be when they reschedule Fundora and Thurman. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'll give us a gift and they'll make it a doubleheader, and they'll put Pacquiao and Romero in the main event and Fundora and Thurman in the co-feature. With all due respect to Fundora and to Thurman, I think there was a lot of people here that sort of had kind of scratched their head as a pay-per-view main event, maybe. Not that it's like a bad match or anything like that, but it didn't really have the star power level to ask, the $80 for a pay-per-view. Remember when he fought a fight with the rematch with Tim Tszyu, which was certainly, I think, a more anticipated fight than Fundora against Thurman. It was the co-feature.
Yep.
So maybe they'll consolidate it, and maybe Pacquiao will be back on January 24th. And if he's fighting Rolly Romero, all things considered, that's not terrible. Obviously, that's interesting. When I was in Vegas at the Canelo and Crawford fight, I ran into Rolly at the Fontainebleau, and we were shooting the shit for a couple of minutes, and he was hopeful that fight would get done, and he would welcome that fight.
Yeah, Rolly's an interesting character. Every time I speak to him, there's always he's always going through something. Or he's a very religious man as well. He talks about God an awful lot, and he's a big name. He's so popular over there. Every time I go over there, he's getting mobbed wherever he walks through.
It's so funny you say that. When I ran into him, I was walking towards the theater there where they were having one of those fight cards during the week. And it was while it was going on, and I was running a little bit behind schedule. So when I was going in and he was coming out, he was actually by himself. There was nobody around him. I think whoever he had been with was still in the theater watching the fight. So it was literally just like the two of us standing there, and no one was around. So that you don't really see him without a bunch of people around him.
I was going to say, I think it was before the last Pacquiao fight, we saw him, and we were trying to get like a little media scrum with him because there were loads of people around him. And then when the fight's normally over and you're trying to get people, he's just like, it's like everyone just circles in on him. He's an interesting dude.
So if they make the match, I mean, so be it.
It's an okay fight. It's a good fight. If they put them on the same card, take money, that's a good fight.
I would rather see Manny, if Manny's going to keep fighting, which he obviously is, I'd rather see him fight Rolly than like they were originally. They spoke a little bit about doing a rematch with Barrios. Nothing against Barrios, but I don't really need to see that. And I think most people thought that Manny won that fight, and he just didn't get the decision. Yeah,
no, I concur with that. Beterbiev, you reported it off the November 22nd card. Does this sort of move us? I don't know what on the other side of that, but do you think we still see this trilogy with Dimitri Bivol? I know he's had his injuries coming back, but is this still on the cards?
I think that third fight is farther away now than it's ever been. I just don't know if that's happening. So he was Bivol had the recent back surgery, so that was going to obviously put off a third fight with Beterbiev or whatever else Bivol might do for a few months. Obviously, he won't be back until sometime and who knows exactly when, but certainly not until next year. And so part of it was being added to that big card on November 22nd. Now that card's pretty loaded. I mean, that has, Benavidez against Anthony Yard and Brian Norman against Devin Haney, and the unification with Bam Rodriguez and Puma Martinez. You got a really good fight for one of the lightweight belts with Abdullah Mason and Sam Noakes. I mean, really stacked card. And then after those fights were announced, they added Beterbiev to the show against a much lesser type opponent, not a title fight. Okay, but to have him on there also adds depth to it. But then he was dropped. It was just suddenly he was just disappeared from the show. So I messaged Turki Al-Sheikh and I asked him, I said, hey, is that true that he's off the show? And Turki did respond to me pretty quickly. He said, yes, he is. Didn't give me a particular reason, but he's certainly not on the card. And so as I come to find out while I was kind of, asking some questions and checking around, he's a free agent now. He apparently doesn't have anything, at least contractually, going forward with Turki, even though I'm sure they would work together if there was the right matchup. He's a free agent from Top Rank. It came to my attention their contract expired sometime like June, July. So he's out there promotionally as a free agent, certainly as a broadcast free agent. And the Bivol fight, I guess, was the third fight. There was a lot of discussion about it, but there was nothing on paper that said it had to happen. Remember when they did the first fight, there was an automatic rematch clause no matter who won. That wasn't the same situation in the second fight. So that fight, Bivol won, another close fight, but there was no obligation other than if if you felt an obligation because Turki asked you to do it. Well, maybe that hasn't quite happened. I'm not sure what the reason that he's not on the show. It could be maybe it's a money thing. Maybe they just feel like the Bivol fight is not going to happen. So why, waste a slot or something like that and do a fight against a much lesser opponent? But the bottom line is, I was told very specifically, Beterbiev is off this card, not for a reason that would normally be, which is an injury, because he's had injuries in the past that have had to postpone fights. But that is not the case. He's not injured, from what I am told by his people.
The flip side to that, what do you think next for Dimitri Bivol then? What do you want to see? I mean, when you look and go that they were the fight to make, we see two great fights in my opinion, like two guys at pretty much the top of their game doing the thing in my opinion, regardless of Beterbiev's age. I thought he was still outstanding. Where does Dimitri Bivol look to go from here, do you think?
Well, I mean, the first thing is make sure you get your back straight out. Make sure you're good to go in terms of your surgery and your healing and all that. Backs are tricky. You just never know. Hopefully, he just gets back to being healthy and can then fight. So now, if he is that healthy and he can fight and everything is good, what's the next best fight to make? I would think it's pretty obvious that if David Benavidez beats Anthony Yard, you make him against Benavidez. I would, I guess, again, be for the undisputed, although there's other mandatories that are kicking around out there. But regardless of the belts, certainly that would be a tremendous battle. They're probably the two named best guys in the weight class other than Beterbiev. Bivol is the champ. Who wouldn't want to see that fight?
That would be an unbelievable fight. When you think of the run as well, that obviously I know Bivol's been on a good run, but Benavidez now as well building, and look, that Canelo fight looks like it'll never happen anyway. So when you look at that, that's an unbelievable fight.
We also know, I guess, that we're not going to see Benavidez against Terence Crawford. Not that I ever thought it would, because as Benavidez has said in some recent interviews, as he's been, trying to promote the card coming up on November 22nd, if he would go back to 68 and fight him, and he's like, I'm not going to 168. He can't make that weight anymore. And Terence Crawford was very realistic when he was asked about it in the press conference after the Canelo victory. He's like, look, he did a big deal by moving up to 2 weight classes to go to 68. Really, in essence, 3 weight classes. To ask Terence Crawford then to go up to 175, he's just not a big guy. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't have the skills, but I'll put it like this: he could probably go to 175 and beat a regular guy. But David Benavidez is not a regular guy.
No, I think as well that just more speaks on the volume of what people think about Terence Crawford when you go, well, there's no one at this way, that way, that way. Why don't you try that? And you look and go, at some point, you have got to go, not just weight classes for a reason, but don't take the piss.
Crawford probably for him, if he does decide to continue to fight. I mean, I guess he could also potentially retire, but if he decides to continue, he's probably best served either defend at 168 or go down and fight at 160. But I don't think he's going to 175 to fight David Benavidez. That's kind of crazy. But Anyway,
you think he'd ever go up to 154? Because when I spoke to him in Vegas for the launch press conference, I sort of teased the fact, look, about obviously having that belt. Would you tempt fate and maybe try to become undisputed down there?
You talking about Crawford going to 154 again?
Yeah, and I said, would you?
Well,
ever
he
think,
said in his press conference after the Canelo victory, because he was asked about that, he said, absolutely not. I'm not going back down to 154. It was a little bit of a struggle even to get there, I guess, in the first place when he fought Madrimov. And so, those holding out hope that maybe he would drop down again all the way back to 54 and take on like a Boots Ennis or any of the other, great young guys and names in that weight class I was talking about. That seems a bridge too far. Look, if you're there's no big super name at 160, but Terence Crawford going to 160 to look for the historical aspect of a career where you could win a title in yet another weight class coming down from 68. I mean, that would be a pretty big deal, whoever he fights. And Crawford's got such a good name now, especially after the way he defeated Canelo, that it would be an event regardless of who he fought in that weight class.
Yeah, I think there was another thing circling about potential rematch between Crawford and Canelo, but was that by your knowledge in a contract, or is that something that Canelo has an option on? When they make these contracts a lot of the time, and obviously we know it makes a lot of money regardless, but is that something that people are going to be as invested in?
I don't think so. And what I am told by Canelo's people is absolutely there's no rematch clause in the contract, but he does have 2 more fights on a contract with Turkey. Now, if Turkey said, I want to do the rematch, I guess they could make the rematch, but there's nothing that he can, invoke and say, I'm getting an automatic rematch with Terence Crawford, which is the case with a lot of these fights. Sometimes there's not even a clause. Like take, for example, we were just talking about with Beterbiev and Bivol, or you could say the same thing when Tyson Fury was fighting the fight against Alexander Usyk, where the deal was a 2-fight deal, regardless of the outcome of the first fight. Same situation that we're going to see coming up with the result of what happened with Conor Benn and Chris Eubank. They had a 2-fight deal. The second fight was automatic, regardless of the outcome of the first fight. And then there's plenty of other fights where guys have the option to invoke an automatic rematch. Tank Davis did it with Lamont Roach off a draw and then backed out of it. In the case of Canelo and Crawford, my understanding is absolutely there is no language that would say to Canelo that he can invoke an automatic rematch.
Well, look,
and by the way, when Turkey pays him $125 million or so, he has every right to say, I'm giving you $125 million. I'll make the call in the next fight, not you.
You're getting paid that kind of dough. I mean,
right.
you fight King Kong if you're told to fight King Kong.
In the immortal words of the great Floyd Mayweather, when you're making that much money, there ain't no losers.
Oh, there isn't, is there? I mean, I know health your wealth, but there ain't no losers. Look, Dan, I really appreciate that. Thanks for jumping on as usual. And look, with an exciting sort of end to the year, I think, coming up, and the first quarter, I think, of next year as well, looks like it's shaping up nicely with what's to come.
Well, I'm not sure what is definitive. I mean, maybe we'll probably get the rescheduling of Fundora and Thurman, like you said, probably Pacquiao back in the ring against Rolly or somebody. What else am I missing that's already on the top?
Boots. I think that'll get done in the first quarter.
Boots and Ortiz. If he comes out of his fight coming up with Lubin, that's probability. Yeah.
I'm hearing from this side as well, and don't laugh when I say it because I know he's retired, but he's going to come out of retirement. Fury will be back. AJ will be back. AJ may be back before the end of the year, I'm told, a little birdie says. But
yeah, I've heard. I mean, that's been something that Eddie's been talking about, like sometime in December, and I guess it's possible. But that if that's the case, that they got to get their stuff moving, because an Anthony Joshua fight is a bigger deal, let's say, than your average fight. So it takes a lot of logistics, a lot of efforts, a lot of stuff to do before that. So, I mean, look, if he does fight before the end of the year, that's great. But I'm skeptical. That's not a knock on anybody, but I think that is probably a little too quick. We're already here. What is it? Today's date? We're in the midway through October. Mm-hmm. So if he's going to be in the ring in December, you can't do a fight on Christmas weekend. At least I don't think you can do that and actually make it make sense financially. So you lose that last 2 weeks of December anyway because of the Christmas holiday and the New Year's holiday.
Yeah.
The only place New Year's they have fights is in Japan because it's already built into the culture. So you have from now until mid-December to get it done. A lot of dates are already spoken for. So, again, I wish them luck, but I do think getting him back in December is a little aggressive. that I would think more likely it's next year. Now you saw, and I don't know if this is legit. I mean, I saw the screenshot. Who knows if it was something that was made up? But after Makhmudov had defeated Dave Allen, he talked about how he was calling out Anthony Joshua, and then he said, and there was a picture of a direct message where Anthony Joshua DM'd him and said, "If you beat David Allen, I'll fight you in my next fight," in his comeback fight. And for Joshua, coming off such a devastating loss to Dubois and coming off of what will be a year layoff and elbow surgery, coming back against Makhmudov, it may be not a super top contender, but at least a guy that maybe the British public is aware of now because he defeated David Allen. And he's a big, strong guy with good power, but not a great chin. That they could make that as like a reasonable Anthony Joshua comeback fight.
I think that fight makes perfect sense. And because he was introduced to the public with a 10,000 crowd, obviously, thanks to Dave Allen, but shout out to Dave Allen, by the way.
That's a good fight.
He is, he's what we call, he's a man of the people. We spoke about like the Ricky Hatton effect, obviously not on that kind of scale going to Vegas, but in terms of who he is as a person, he give everything. And you want someone who won't lie to themselves as well. Like he says, she's not good enough. You don't get that in boxing.
Listen,
it's so
not everybody is going to be a world champion. Not everybody is going to be on the pound for pound list. But guys like Makhmudov, guys like Dave Allen, there's plenty of fighters where they give the fans an entertaining fight and they give a great effort. They can have careers. They can make money. Okay, I mean, every sport in boxing also is one of them where you need that middle class. You need, you have your elite fighters. You have the guys at the very top level. But there's nothing wrong with just being a good fighter who gives a good effort, makes a good payday. I mean, there's not a lot of guys on Dave Allen's talent level that bring in, 9,000 people to a stadium or an arena and pack it out and have them singing and dancing and drinking and having a good time. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, he gives a great effort, and we need more guys like that in boxing, not less.
100%. Dan, appreciate your time. I'm going to get this chopped up. Also, everyone, make sure you subscribe to Dan's newsletter. The link, as always, for us will be on Twitter, will be on the stories, will be in the link in the description in this interview. Make sure you subscribe for all the latest breaking news as well as Boxing Social. Appreciate it, Dan.
All right, my man, you got it.
The revolutionary ankle lock system, an integrated brace built into the boots, delivering unrivaled support, protecting ligaments from twists, tears, and trauma.